You know what fascinates me? The things that make most folks grumble and moan are the very things wealthy people wake up excited to do. Isn't that something? I noticed this pattern years ago when I was just a farm boy from Idaho, trying to figure out why some people drive Cadillacs while others can barely make rent. The difference isn't luck. It isn't inheritance or connections or even talent. The real difference is in how they respond to necessary work. That's it. So simple, yet so profound. I remember back when I was starting out, broke and discouraged. My mentor, Mr. Shoaff, asked me, "Jim, what do you hate doing in your business?" I rattled off quite a list, making calls to strangers, tracking expenses, studying market trends, waking up early to prepare for meetings. He just smiled and said, "That's your fortune list. Everything you avoid is exactly what successful people embrace." I thought he was crazy, but I started watching successful people. The millionaires I met weren't avoiding these tasks, they were mastering them. They weren't looking for shortcuts around them. They were becoming extraordinary at them. Most people spend their lives complaining about what they must do to succeed. The wealthy spend their lives mastering what must be done. That's it. Such a simple distinction with such enormous consequences. Consider this. When the alarm goes off at 5 a.m., the average person hits snooze and complains about being tired. The wealthy person has already trained themselves to value that early morning hour. They don't fight it, they appreciate it as their competitive advantage. When faced with reading financial statements or industry reports, the average person says, "This is boring. I don't understand these numbers." The wealthy person says, "This information gives me clarity and control. It's the language of business, and I will master it." Your attitude toward necessary work determines your outcomes more than any other factor. We call it work for a reason. It requires effort, but your relationship with that effort shapes your entire economic destiny. I learned this lesson the hard way. For years, I complained about making sales calls. I dreaded rejection. I postponed them. I made excuses. And my bank account reflected that attitude perfectly. Then one day I decided to change my story. Instead of saying I hate making calls, I started saying making calls is how I create opportunities. My actions followed my new story and my results changed dramatically. You see, the wealthy don't necessarily enjoy every aspect of building success more than you do. They've simply learned to associate different meanings to necessary activities. They focus on the outcome, not the momentary discomfort. What you consistently avoid eventually defines your life. What you consistently embrace eventually transforms it. It really is that straightforward. Think about the things you regularly avoid or complain about. Making that difficult phone call, having that uncomfortable conversation about money, studying to develop a valuable skill, getting up earlier, exercising discipline with your finances, following through on commitments. These activities create the very foundation of success. Yet most people spend their lives trying to avoid them, then wonder why success seems so elusive. The wealth mindset doesn't view necessary activities as burdens, but as opportunities. Not as costs, but as investments. Not as obligations, but as privileges. I remember meeting a young man at one of my seminars who complained that his boss expected him to arrive early, stay late, and learn skills beyond his job description. I told him, "Your boss is giving you $1 million education, and you're upset about it." 6 years later, that same young man had started his own successful company. He told me, "Everything I complained about became the skills I needed to succeed." What if you started seeing the very things you avoid as your greatest opportunities for growth? What if the activities you resist contain your greatest potential for wealth creation? Your relationship with necessary work is the most accurate predictor of your future financial situation. Change that relationship, and you change everything. Let me show you specifically what wealthy people embrace that average folks typically avoid. First, wealthy people love studying money. Most people avoid looking at their finances. They don't track expenses. They don't learn about investments. They hope everything works out. The wealthy study money flows with fascination. They track where every dollar goes. They read financial books. They study investment strategies. They find this empowering rather than boring. I know a woman who transformed her life by spending 30 minutes every morning reviewing her finances. Not because she enjoyed spreadsheets, but because she understood that awareness creates control, and control creates options. Within 3 years, she went from debt to a 6-figure investment portfolio. Same person, different habit. Second, wealthy people enjoy constant learning. Most folks finish school and celebrate never having to learn again. The wealthy view learning as a lifelong advantage. They read books about their industry every day. They attend seminars. They seek mentors. They study successful people. They see education not as a period in life, but as a way of life. One of my clients reads at least 1 book per week related to his business. That's over 50 books a year. When others ask how he finds the time, he replies, "I don't find time. I allocate time for what determines my income." After 5 years, his expertise has made him the highest paid consultant in his field. Third, wealthy people appreciate building relationships. Average folks view networking as manipulative or uncomfortable. The wealthy understand that your network determines your net worth. They invest time nurturing professional relationships. They follow up. They add value first. They connect people. They build genuine relationships based on mutual benefit. I knew a shy accountant who forced himself to attend 1 industry event each month. He didn't enjoy it initially, but he committed to meeting 3 new people at each event and following up thoughtfully. 3 years later, 90% of his business came through referrals from his network. The very activity he dreaded became his primary business asset. Fourth, wealthy people embrace rejection and risk. Most people organize their lives to avoid rejection and risk. The wealthy understand that growth happens only through stretching beyond comfort. They make the call. They ask for the meeting. They propose the deal. They launch the product. They get told no more often. A friend of mine in real estate tracks his rejection rate. He aims for at least 10 rejections per week. Why? Because he knows that each no brings him closer to a yes, and each yes brings substantial commission. He doesn't avoid rejection. He pursues it as a necessary step towards success. Fifth, wealthy people practice delayed gratification. Most folks demand immediate pleasure and convenience. The wealthy willingly sacrifice today for greater rewards tomorrow. They save and invest rather than spend. They build assets before buying luxuries. They choose short-term discomfort for long-term freedom. One of my mentors drove the same modest car for 12 years while building his business. His colleagues bought luxury vehicles and teased him about his practical choice. Today, he owns multiple successful companies and could buy any car he wants. But his colleagues are still making payments on depreciating assets. Sixth, wealthy people maximize unsupervised time. Most people work hard only when someone is watching. The wealthy work with intensity during unstructured, unsupervised hours. They use weekends strategically. They transform commute time into learning time. They turn free time into growth time. Consider how you spend your time between 6-8 a.m. or 7-10 p.m. These hours often determine your economic destiny because they reveal your self-motivation. The wealthy use these hours intentionally rather than mindlessly. Now, how do you transform from someone who avoids necessary work to someone who embraces it? This transformation isn't about personality, it's about practice and perspective. The first step is awareness. Notice what you consistently avoid. Pay attention to your complaints. They reveal the very activities that could transform your circumstances. Your complaints are actually a treasure map to your fortune. A client once told me he hated making follow-up calls to prospects. I asked him to write down exactly what he said to himself before making these calls. His internal dialogue was filled with fear and negative expectations. No wonder he avoided them. We rewrote his internal script to focus on the service he provided and the problems he solved. His resistance decreased dramatically when he changed his story. The second step is reframing. You must attach new meaning to necessary activities. Instead of seeing budget work as restrictive, see it as the path to freedom. Instead of viewing sales calls as intrusive, view them as offering solutions to people with problems. Instead of seeing rejected proposals as personal failures, see them as refinement steps toward better offers. What you call things matters tremendously. If you call something a burden, your mind will treat it as something to avoid. If you call it an opportunity, your mind seeks ways to maximize it. Change your language, change your perception, change your results. The third step is small, consistent action. Don't try to transform overnight. Break necessary activities into tiny steps that don't trigger resistance. Make 3 calls instead of 20. Study for 15 minutes instead of 2 hours. Save 5% instead of 20%. A struggling salesman in my program couldn't bring himself to make cold calls. We started with just 1 call per day. But it had to be the first thing he did each morning. Just 1 call. After a month, he increased to 3 daily calls. 6 months later, he was making 15 prospecting calls daily without resistance. He tripled his income that year through incremental habit building. The fourth step is environment management. Surround yourself with people who embrace necessary work rather than avoid it. Join mastermind groups where members hold each other accountable. Spend time with people who find joy in discipline and growth rather than escape and entertainment. Your environment will shape your standards more powerfully than your intentions. Choose carefully who and what surrounds you. The remarkable thing about this transformation is how it affects every area of life. People who learn to embrace necessary work don't just become wealthier, they become healthier, develop stronger relationships, and experience greater overall satisfaction. I remember speaking with a successful business owner who told me, "Jim, what changed my life wasn't learning new strategies. It was learning to love the daily disciplines that most people avoid. Once I fell in love with consistency, everything else fell into place." You see, personal responsibility is the foundation of all success. When you stop blaming circumstances and start embracing necessary work, you move from victim to creator. You stop waiting for better conditions and start creating better results regardless of conditions. This principle applies universally. I've seen it transform people in every industry, from every background, with every level of education. The moment they stopped avoiding what must be done and started mastering it, their trajectories changed permanently. So how do you implement this wisdom starting today? Let me offer practical steps that anyone can take. First, identify your avoidance list. Write down the 3 to 5 activities you consistently avoid but know would improve your financial situation. Be brutally honest. These might include reviewing your finances, making sales calls, studying your industry, networking, or having difficult conversations. This list reveals your growth opportunities. Next, for each item, write down what it costs you to avoid it. Calculate the actual price of your avoidance in dollars, opportunities, and growth. Then write what embracing this activity could create in your life over 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years. This contrast creates motivation. Then, schedule these activities first in your day, before easier tasks. What you schedule first gets done. What you schedule when I have time rarely happens. Give your growth activities your best energy, not your leftover attention. Create accountability through commitment to others. Tell someone specifically what you'll do and by when. Report your progress honestly. External accountability bridges the gap between intention and action until new habits form. Track your results visually. Create a simple chart showing your consistency with necessary activities. This makes progress visible and builds momentum. Small wins compound into significant transformations over time. Finally, celebrate your relationship with necessary work rather than just outcomes. When you make those 10 calls, acknowledge your discipline, regardless of immediate results. When you study for that hour, recognize your commitment to growth. The results will come, but the daily practice itself deserves celebration. Remember, success is never about doing extraordinary things. It's about doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. It's about mastering the fundamentals that most people avoid. What separates the wealthy from everyone else isn't secret knowledge or special connections. It's their willingness to do consistently what others do occasionally. It's their commitment to embrace what others avoid. The activities you find ways to avoid are precisely the activities you must find ways to master. Your greatest opportunities hide in your strongest resistances. I've worked with thousands of people over decades, and I've never seen anyone fail who embraced necessary work with consistency. And I've never seen anyone succeed who chronically avoided it. Your relationship with necessary work is that powerful. Think about your financial heroes. Study their daily habits. You'll find they've mastered the very activities most people avoid. They haven't eliminated these activities, they've elevated their relationship with them. Years ago, I met a young man who complained constantly about every aspect of building his business. 10 years later, I ran into him again. He had become remarkably successful. I asked what changed. He smiled and said, I finally realized that success isn't about finding easier tasks. It's about becoming a better person who embraces necessary tasks with a different spirit. That's the secret. Become the kind of person who does whatever is necessary with a spirit of opportunity rather than obligation. But when you transform your relationship with necessary work, you transform everything, your income, your impact, your legacy, all flow from this fundamental relationship. So tonight, make that list of what you've been avoiding. Tomorrow morning, begin embracing those very activities with a new perspective. A year from now, you'll look back at this decision as the turning point in your financial life. The choice is yours. Continue complaining about what creates wealth or start embracing it. Continue avoiding what builds success or start mastering it. Your future is determined not by what you know, but by what you're willing to practice. Remember this, rich people love doing what you complain about. Maybe it's time to start loving it too. You know what amazes me most about this principle? How it compounds over time. The gap between those who embrace necessary work and those who avoid it starts small, almost imperceptible in the beginning. But watch what happens as the years pass. I remember two young salespeople who started at the same company on the same day. Both had similar backgrounds, similar educations, similar opportunities. After 6 months, their results looked nearly identical. You couldn't tell who would pull ahead. But I noticed something subtle. One consistently complained about the fundamental activities of their profession, the cold calls, the follow-ups, the paperwork, the product knowledge requirements. He did these things, but reluctantly, and only to the minimum standard. The other approached these same activities differently, not with artificial enthusiasm, that never lasts, but with respect for their necessity. He didn't love every minute either, but he respected what these activities represented. He studied them, he refined them, he measured them. Most importantly, he never avoided them. 5 years later, the gap between these two individuals had widened dramatically. 10 years later, one was struggling while the other owned the company. Same starting point, wildly different outcomes, all stemming from their relationship with necessary work. This principle becomes even more powerful when you consider specialization. When you embrace the tasks others avoid, you naturally develop rare and valuable skills. You become the person who can solve problems others can't. You build capabilities others lack. Your value multiplies. I've seen this with public speaking. Most people rank public speaking among their greatest fears. They avoid presentations. They duck opportunities to speak. They resist developing this skill. The few who embrace it, who seek speaking opportunities, who study effective communication, who practice regularly, gain tremendous advantage. They rise in organizations, they influence decisions, they attract opportunities. The same applies to negotiation skills. Most folks feel uncomfortable discussing money. They avoid asking for better terms. They accept initial offers. The few who master this necessary skill, who practice value articulation, who study effective negotiation, who become comfortable with financial conversations, consistently secure better outcomes throughout life. What necessary skills are you currently avoiding? What capabilities would transform your income if you mastered them instead of minimized them? Another observation, those who embrace necessary work sleep better at night. There's a psychological burden that comes with avoidance. When you procrastinate on important tasks, they don't disappear. They occupy mental bandwidth. They create subtle anxiety. They diminish your confidence. Conversely, there's profound satisfaction in facing what must be done. Not just accomplishing it, but facing it willingly, with your full attention. This builds genuine confidence that no positive thinking technique can match. I see this with taxes and financial planning. Most people avoid looking closely at their finances. They procrastinate on tax preparation. They ignore retirement planning. This creates constant low-grade worry. The wealthy approach these matters differently. They face them directly, often working with qualified professionals, but never avoiding awareness. This produces not just better financial outcomes, but greater peace of mind. What financial realities are you currently avoiding looking at? What would change if you faced them directly? Here's another pattern I've noticed. People who master necessary work tend to simplify their lives. They focus on fundamentals rather than searching for shortcuts or hacks. This simplification creates clarity and momentum. When I was young, I constantly looked for easier paths to success. I tried countless systems promising quick results with minimal effort. Each new approach distracted me from mastering the basics. My mentor finally told me, "Jim, success isn't complicated, but it is difficult. Stop looking for easier approaches and start embracing the necessary ones." That advice transformed my results. I stopped chasing magical solutions and focused on consistent execution of fundamental activities. My income quadrupled in 18 months. The wealthy concentrate on mastering a few necessary activities rather than dabbling in many optional ones. They go narrow and deep rather than wide and shallow. They understand that excellence in fundamentals outperforms adequacy in many areas. What are the 3 to 5 fundamental activities in your field that drive 80% of results? What would happen if you stopped searching for shortcuts and instead mastered these essentials? Something else to consider. Your relationship with necessary work reveals your relationship with yourself. How you handle what must be done reflects your self-trust and self-respect. When you make commitments to yourself and keep them, especially regarding difficult tasks, you build unshakable confidence. When you consistently avoid what matters, you damage your relationship with yourself. You teach yourself that your commitments don't matter. This extends far beyond financial outcomes. I see this with physical health. Those who respect their bodies enough to do necessary exercise, even when inconvenient or uncomfortable, demonstrate self-respect. Those who consistently make and keep promises regarding their health build tremendous self-trust. This same pattern applies to wealth creation. What promises have you made to yourself about your financial future? Are you keeping them or breaking them? What does this reveal about your relationship with yourself? This principle even affects how others perceive your character. People instinctively trust those who demonstrate willingness to do necessary work, even when difficult. They naturally doubt those who chronically seek shortcuts or avoid responsibilities. Your reputation, which ultimately determines many of your opportunities, stems largely from how you relate to necessary work. Not what you say about work ethic, but what you demonstrate consistently. As you implement these ideas, remember that motivation follows action rather than preceding it. Many wait to feel motivated before embracing necessary tasks. This backward approach guarantees inconsistency. Start with small, consistent actions regardless of feelings. The motivation, enthusiasm, and even enjoyment eventually follow the behavior, not the other way around. Begin with 5 minutes of focused effort on what you've been avoiding. Then build gradually. A student once told me he couldn't find the motivation to review his finances regularly. I suggested he commit to just 3 minutes every morning, a period so short that motivation became irrelevant. Within weeks, these brief sessions expanded naturally as his interest grew. Today, he manages multiple investment properties and attributes his financial transformation to that initial 3-minute commitment. What could you commit 3 minutes to daily that would begin transforming your relationship with necessary work? As we conclude, consider this final thought. The quality of your life ultimately reflects the quality of your habits. Not your intentions, not your knowledge, not your goals, but your daily habits. When you transform your relationship with necessary work, you transform the foundation of your results in every area. Financial success simply makes visible what was already true about your character and habits. So tonight, make that decision. Choose one necessary activity you've been avoiding. Schedule it first thing tomorrow. Give it your full attention, not because it's easy or immediately rewarding, but because it's necessary for your growth. Do this consistently and watch how it transforms not just your finances, but your sense of personal power. You have greatness within you. It emerges not by avoiding challenges, but by embracing them. Not by seeking the easy path, but by mastering the necessary one. Rich people love doing what you complain about. Starting today, you can love it too. The choice, as always, remains yours.